Okay, here we go. Welcome back, if you did leave. All right, so here goes the first section: history and current events. What we've all been waiting for. This is when it gets really fun. If you've made it this far, congratulations. I'm going to say to you, look, if you don't find this presentation interesting, and it's not because my stuff is interesting, I'm saying if you don't find this information interesting, I don't know what is interesting to you, because this is some of the most interesting stuff I've ever seen in my life. When you're watching this stuff, I want you to ask yourself, how come I've never heard of this? That should be the main question in your brain in this section. How come I've never heard of this? Almost as if nobody wants you to know about it. The information is there, but we're not just going to give it to you via our mainstream media or via our public education system. No, you got to do some digging. Somebody has to let you know, and then you got to really do some digging. And then you got to sift through a bunch of bull. But once you sift through the bull, whew, those diamonds are worth it. So here we go. History and current events. Now, in order to understand where we are going, we must understand where we have been. Okay? So I'm going to present to you key points in history where the beast system really showed its head, where the New World Order really showed you what they're about. Okay? It's important to understand how they operate, how Satan operates, how he has operated in the past, and how he operates now, so that we can understand how he will likely operate in the future. Do you see what I'm saying? So we're going to watch these videos and make your own decision. But here we go. Let me turn up. So first guy we're going to look at is Smedley Darlington Butler. Yeah, middle name is nuts, right? I don't know how many of y'all have heard of Smedley Butler. I hadn't heard of him until I really started digging into this stuff. And when I did, I was like, man, whew, I can't believe I never heard of this before. I was like, what I was thinking. Like, I can't believe I never heard of Smedley Butler before. It's even crazier when you read about who he was. And I got it there, but he's the most decorated Marine in U.S. history at the time of his death. Have you ever heard of this guy? I hadn't heard of him. And he uncovered the business plot in November of 1934. And that's what we're going to focus on in this video. Smedley Darlington Butler was a United States, I'm reading the Wikipedia article, was a United States Marine Corps Major General, the highest rank authorized at that time, and at the time of his death, the most decorated Marine in U.S. history. During his 34-year career as a Marine, he participated in military actions in the Philippines, China, Central America, and the Caribbean during the Banana Wars, and France in World War I. Butler later became an outspoken critic of U.S. wars and their consequences, as well as exposing the business plot, an alleged plan to overthrow the U.S. government. Let's see what Smedley Butler has to say about the business plot. Let's hear it from Smedley himself.
I appeared before the Congressional Committee, the highest representation of the American people, under subpoena to tell what I knew of activities which I believe might lead to an attempt to set up a fascist dictatorship. The plan as outlined to me was to form an organization of veterans, to use as a bluff or as a club at least, to intimidate the government and break down our democratic institutions. The upshot of the whole thing was that I was supposed to lead an organization of 500,000 men, which would be able to take over the functions of government. I talked with an investigator for this committee who came to me with a subpoena on Sunday, November 18th. He told me they had unearthed evidence linking my name with several such veteran organizations. As it then seemed to me to be getting serious, I felt it was my duty to tell all I knew of such activities to this committee. My main interest in all this is to preserve our democratic institutions. I want to retain the right to vote, the right to speak freely, and the right to write. If we maintain these basic principles, our democracy is safe. No dictatorship can exist with suffrage, freedom of speech, and press.
All right. Smedley Butler, y'all. Give it up for Smedley. Oh my gosh. Like, talk about, wow, man, that dude has so much courage. Ooh. So, yeah, in case you didn't really hear what he was saying, I'll just read the first couple of sentences on the Wikipedia page pertaining to the business plot. Here we go. The business plot was an alleged political conspiracy in 1933 in the United States. Retiree Marine Corps Major General Smedley Butler claimed that wealthy businessmen were plotting to create a fascist veterans organization with Butler as its leader and use it in a coup d'etat to overthrow President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. In 1934, Butler testified before the United States House of Representatives Special Committee on Un-American Activities on these claims. No one was prosecuted. At the time of the incidents, news media dismissed the plot. Go figure. With the New York Times editorial characterizing it as a gigantic hoax. While historians have questioned whether or not a coup was actually close to execution, most agree that some sort of wild scheme was contemplated and discussed. How carefully worded was that Wikipedia article, right? So yeah, I mean, there's Smedley Butler, and I'm going to connect all this at the end. But like, I guess what I really have to say about that is, you really think Smedley Butler's experience was an isolated incident? You really think that big money just tried to like take over the country just one time, and Smedley Butler said no, and they just stopped? You really think that's an isolated incident? Oh my gosh, give me a break. Oh my gosh, I'm not okay. So I'm done. That's Smedley Butler. All right. Now, have you heard of Robert B. Strecker, MD, PhD? Probably not. Have you ever heard of the Strecker Memorandum? Probably not. I'm moving this over so that we can see over here. He released what is called the Strecker Memorandum in 1988. And he graduated from Vanderbilt University Medical School at the top of his class. This dude was a PhD virologist. Okay? I'm going to read from the Strecker Memorandum's website. I'm going to read to you what they got there. You can do your own research. And I'm also going to say I'm not showing you any videos that I haven't watched. So I've seen the entire Strecker Memorandum. I've seen all these videos. I've done the digging myself. I'm not showing you anything that's the first time I've seen it, okay? And at the end, I got bonus materials that you can go and you can check out all the stuff that I've been reading over the past few years, whatever. Okay, great. So the Strecker Memorandum on AIDS, what is that? I'm going to read to you what this is. This is the most important thing you're ever going to watch. It's actually the first thing that they say. The Strecker Memorandum. Okay, here we go. This is the most controversial video you'll ever see. Dr. Robert Strecker refutes with documented evidence virtually everything the so-called experts and government reports have told you about AIDS. He asserts in no uncertain terms that AIDS is a man-made disease, number one. AIDS is not a homosexual disease, number two. AIDS is not a venereal disease, number three. AIDS can be carried by mosquitoes, number four. And five, there can never be a vaccine for AIDS. Although decades have passed and untold billions have been spent in research, cancer is still with us, the second major cause of death in America. The most dreaded fear that all oncologists, cancer doctors, virologists, and immunologists live with is that someday cancer in one form or another will become a contagious disease, transferable from one person to another. AIDS has now made that fear a reality. And if you think you're safe because you're not gay or promiscuous or because you're not sexually active, then you had better watch this video very carefully until you fully understand what Dr. Strecker is telling you as he takes you step by step and shows you how this dreaded disease was actually man-made. Condoms can't prevent it, and there won't ever be a vaccine. Dr. Strecker shows us how AIDS was predicted, requested, created, deployed, and that it works very well. Now, before I play the video, I want you to understand what happened to Dr. Robert Strecker. But you got to read this website. I'm going to read the bullet points here because basically what happened was him, his brother, and one prominent politician in their area. They learned about AIDS, and after Dr. Strecker was researching it, and they started going on a crusade to teach people about AIDS. And wouldn't you know it, the brother and that politician just magically wound up dead one day, and you hadn't heard from Robert Strecker since. I actually just did some digging about a month ago. Turns out he died this year. He died April of this year, 2018, in a car accident. Isn't that crazy? But yeah, like he's one of the people I always wanted to meet, but he actually died a few months ago. So God rest his soul. Super courageous. But let me read what it says. The story begins in 1983 with Dr. Robert Strecker, MD, PhD. Dr. Strecker practices internal medicine and gastroenterology in Los Angeles. He is a trained pathologist and holds a PhD in pharmacology. Dr. Strecker and his brother Ted, an attorney, were preparing a proposal for a health maintenance organization, HMO, for the Security Pacific Bank of California. They needed to know the long-term financial effects of ensuring the treatment of AIDS patients. Inasmuch as this information was not readily available in 1983, both brothers began researching the medical literature to learn what they could about this relatively new disease. The information they uncovered right from the beginning was so startling to them, so hard to believe, that it would dramatically alter both their lives and lead them on a 5-year quest culminating with the creation of the Strecker Memorandum, the most controversial video of our time, and a remarkable set of documents called the BioAttack Alert. So then they already go into describe what they discovered, but you can see that in the video because and even this video, it's just like a trailer that I created that I'm gonna show you. Let's see. Let me look for the place where they talk about his brother. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Be bold, and mighty forces will come to your aid, or mighty forces will come and kill you. An ominous personal aspect of this story has been the sudden, unexpected deaths of two of the key players. First, Dr. Strecker's brother, Ted Strecker, was found shot to death in his home in Springfield, Missouri, an apparent suicide, on August 11, 1988. Was Ted Strecker suicidal? Perhaps. In the past, he suffered from depression and monumental frustration at the relative lack of interest in his findings. Dr. Strecker spoke with him the night before his death. He said Ted was cheerful and in good spirits and looking forward to certain new developments that promised progress. The next day, he was found dead, his .22 caliber rifle next to him. No note, no message, no goodbyes to anyone. Officially a suicide. Next, and this is the politician I was telling you about, Illinois State Representative Douglas Huff of Chicago was found alone in his home, dead from an apparent overdose of cocaine and heroin on September 22, 1988. Representative Huff did everything in his power to make the Illinois State Legislature and the people of Chicago aware of Dr. Strecker's work. He was very vocal, gave many press interviews, and was constantly on television and radio urging people to wake up to the cover-up concerning AIDS. Did Representative Huff use drugs? Perhaps. Was he an addict? No. Would he have known how dangerous a massive overdose of cocaine and heroin was? Yes, of course. Cause of death? Officially a stroke. Dr. Strecker has serious doubts that his brother killed himself. Representative Huff's associates also doubt he died accidentally, and yet they are gone. Who's next? So let's watch this video, this trailer that I made about the Strecker Memorandum.
AIDS, the most devastating biological catastrophe the world has ever known. This disease will kill more people this year than all other viral diseases combined. According to Dr. Robert Strecker, AIDS is a man-made, genetically engineered virus that was either accidentally or deliberately introduced into the world's population. AIDS is not a homosexual disease. AIDS is not a venereal disease. AIDS did not originate from the green monkey. AIDS is not prevented by the use of condoms. and AIDS is not likely to ever be cured by a vaccine. I realize what you've just heard contradicts most of what you've been told about AIDS. In this program, Dr. Robert Strecker will present documented evidence that refutes the official stand taken by so-called AIDS experts, members of the research community, and the government. And now, let's find out the truth about AIDS.
I'm Dr. Robert Strecker, a practicing internist and gastroenterologist in Los Angeles. I have a special interest in pharmacology, pathology, and now AIDS. I became interested in the AIDS question several years ago in doing a health maintenance proposal, basically an insurance proposal, for Security Pacific Bank, a bank here in California. More and more members of the medical and research community, such as Dr. Peter Duesberg, the University of California at Berkeley, Dr. John Seal, a member of the Royal Society of Medicine of London, and Dr. Alan Cantwell, who has recently finished a third book on AIDS, this one on the origin of AIDS, are questioning the validity of the popular view about AIDS, which has failed to scientifically explain the disease. So I've decided it's time that someone tells you the truth about AIDS. So in this program, I will show you how the AIDS virus was actually predicted, requested, produced, deployed, and now threatens the very existence of mankind because it works. To understand why I believe that the AIDS virus came out of a laboratory rather than out of the jungles of Africa, you have to understand several important concepts which I will address in the next few minutes. These concepts actually include an understanding of viruses, bacteria, human cell lines, tissue culture, and manipulation of all of those things in the laboratory. In the first question about the AIDS virus, in addressing what the AIDS virus is, the virus has a morphology, something of this form, which is actually a so-called D-type retrovirus. So what are viruses? Some people say that viruses are the smallest replicating microorganisms. Some people say that viruses are bad news in a sugar coat. Actually, in the case of a retrovirus, the AIDS virus, which is R-E-T-R-O, retrovirus, what does this mean? Viruses in general are thought to be the smallest replicating organisms that require other cells to grow themselves in. Viruses are not capable of reproducing themselves on their own outside of living tissue, is the dogma of the scientists today. Viruses must inhabit another cell for eventual growth and reproduction. Bacteria, fungi, and some other organisms actually are capable of growing outside of tissue. In other words, they don't have to inhibit or inhabit other tissue to reproduce themselves. They can grow on tissue culture plates, such as bacteria. But viruses must grow inside of tissue, which requires that there be living human or animal tissue for them to replicate in. Now, if we look at the word retrovirus, we know that this is a small self-replicating organism which grows inside of living tissue. Now, what does the term retro stand for? The term retro, in the case of this virus, stands for the fact that contained within the AIDS virus and other so-called human retroviruses or other animal retroviruses are small enzymes known as reverse transcriptase. That is where the word retro comes from. The reverse transcriptase, which is the RE comes from reverse, and the TRO comes from transcriptase. That is an enzyme in the AIDS virus which actually is responsible for duplication of the genes of the AIDS virus, which are in an RNA form, different than human form. Human genetic material is in a DNA form. So if the AIDS virus is to insert itself into human material, somehow after infection of the cell, what happens is this enzyme duplicates the RNA of the AIDS virus into a DNA form and actually inserts that into the human DNA. If you have an example, here's a cell, and inside this cell, here's the human DNA. What happens is the AIDS virus genes get in and are actually duplicated into DNA form, copied by the reverse transcriptase. That information is then inserted into the genetic makeup of the human cell. This is now an AIDS virus residing in the human genes, which then sends out a signal for production of a new AIDS virus. So, the RNA is the genetic information of all retroviruses. It's copied into the DNA formed by reverse transcriptase, inserted into the genes, and subsequent production of new virus.
To better understand this subject and to help us appreciate the importance of Dr. Strecker's work, I'm going to briefly clarify and emphasize some of the information in this presentation. Virology is the study of viruses. It deals with tiny living organisms visible only with the use of the most powerful electron microscopes. In fact, hundreds of thousands of AIDS viruses can easily fit on the head of a pin. What makes the AIDS virus particularly deadly is its ability to not only invade and neutralize human cells, but the virus's ability to put its own genetic material inside the human cell's genetic structure, thereby allowing the virus to use the human cell as a kind of virus factory, reproducing more viruses from the human cell's raw materials. Unlike larger organisms like bacteria, viruses do not respond to conventional medical treatment, much like the common cold virus cannot be treated effectively by drugs.
Now, how does this AIDS virus?
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I know. Fascinating stuff, right? It's super heavy and it's super technical, but I think, once again, that lends credibility to it. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the first time I saw that, I was like, whoa. And when you finish watching, you're like, man, I know more about AIDS than most people, ever. Dr. Strecker, another incredibly brave person, speaking truth to power. Cut down, cut down by the very system that I am sure created it being the AIDS virus. So let's keep going, because I know that we're moving a little slow and I want to go a little faster because, let's keep moving. But yeah, so the rest of the presentation, we're going, I'm telling you, it's going to be some interesting stuff. It's going to be some interesting stuff. Let's keep going. Okay, Stanley Meyer, this one's fun. So kind of like how, you ever heard that phrase, big pharma, right? Kind of like how big pharma, there is probably never really going to be a cure for cancer because you can't make money curing things, but maintaining things for the life of a person, that's, you can make money off of that. So it makes more sense in a Western capitalist society to keep people sick than it is to cure them. And if you follow the money, that's what the money says. Take a look at this guy, Stanley Meyer. He invented a water-powered fuel cell and magically wound up dead one day. So I'm going to read the bio. Got it here. You could do your own digging online. And then we're going to watch a short little news clip from back in the day of him operating his car and talking about his car. Yeah, God bless you, Stanley Meyer. Oh, God bless you. Stanley Meyer, Stanley Allen Meyer, was born August 24, 1940, and was one of two twin boys. His twin brother is Stephen Meyer. Meyer was born and lived on Columbus's east side before moving to Grandview Heights, where he finished high school. He briefly attended Ohio State University and joined the military. We are always building something, quote unquote, Stephen Meyer recalled of their youth. Quote unquote, we went out and created our toys. At 6'3" and with a booming voice, Stanley Meyer was charismatic and persuasive, equally conversant with physicists and bricklayers. He was also eccentric. His favorite phrase was "praise the Lord and pass the ammunition," friends said. He once called Grove City police to his home and laboratory on Broadway to report a suspicious package. The Columbus bomb squad detonated the parcel only to discover it was equipment that he had ordered. Patents. He was the author of various patents in oceanography, cardiac monitoring, and banking systems of validation, 42 in all, including 10 in Canada. At the beginning of 1989, it appears Meyer may have received preferential treatment at the patent office. Some of his patents were accepted in 1993. The majority of Meyer's patents form part of Section 101, where the agreement of the patent to be issued is dependent on a successful demonstration. The patents of Meyer were were dispatched in only 8 months, which is a very short time. It proves to some degree that the patent office thought Myers' technology was significant, given the approximately 200,000 patent applications were queued at that point in time. So let's get down to his water fuel cell technology, because that's the important thing. But you can read about where he worked and his business dealings and his achievements if you go find the bio yourself. But I'm going to read about the water fuel cell a little bit, and then we're going to watch the video here. And then we're going to talk about his death, too, because the death isn't covered in the news coverage for obvious reasons, because he was dead. So, yeah. Water fuel cell technology. His focus on water as fuel began in 1975, a year after the end of the Arab oil embargo, which had triggered high gas prices, gas pump lines, and anxiety. It became imperative that we must try to bring in an alternative fuel source and do it very quickly, Myers says in his documentary. This led to Meyer developing what he patented as the water fuel cell. Meyer claimed that an automobile retrofitted with the device could use water as fuel instead of gasoline. The water fuel cell purportedly split water into its component elements, hydrogen and oxygen. The hydrogen was then burned to generate energy, a process that reconstituted the water molecules. According to Meyer, the device required less energy to perform electrolysis than the minimum energy requirement predicted or measured by conventional science. So this dude invents a water-powered car, and then, lo and behold, he dies. After more than 20 years of research and tinkering, Stanley Allen Meyer, his brother, and 2 Belgian investors raised glasses in the Grove City Cracker Barrel on March 20th, 1998. Stephen Meyer recalls the events of that evening. Quote, Stanley took a sip of cranberry juice, then he grabbed his neck, bolted out the door, dropped to his knees, and vomited violently. I ran outside and asked him, what's wrong? Stephen recalled. He said, they poisoned me. That was his dying declaration. Stanley Meyer's bizarre death at age 57 ended work that, if proved valid, could have ended reliance on fossil fuels. Let's watch the video, shall we?
The top our news here at 6 o'clock, an age-old dream becoming a reality. A local inventor has discovered a way, hear this, to use water to run your car.
It's a major breakthrough that will no doubt make motorists happy. And as Ralph Robinson explains, the Pentagon is also showing lots of interest in this project.
Yes, they are.
Water has always been considered a precious commodity, but Stan Meyer's invention may make it even more valuable. He has developed what's called a water fuel cell. It has taken the place of his old gas tank. The water fuel cell breaks down water molecules into oxygen and hydrogen. The hydrogen is used to run his dune buggy. I don't care if you use rainwater, well water, city water, ocean water. If you don't have any fresh water, go ahead and use snow. If you don't have any snow available to you, then use salt water because there's no adverse effect to the fuel cell.
Meyer started working on this project 4 years ago. He's not a scientist. He isn't even a chemist. In fact, he never graduated from college. Myers was determined, he says, to design something to protect this country from oil embargoes.
What a badass.
We've calculated that if we take the dune buggy from Los Angeles to New York, we would roughly use 22 gallons of water.
The
22 gallons of water.
Colonel in last week to look at Meyer's invention. There's talk of possibly using it in the Star Wars defense program and to run army tanks. Myers is currently perfecting a water fuel cell for cars that will cost about $1,500. He says it won't need any maintenance and you won't have to replace it. It'll be at least 2 years before the fuel system goes into mass production. The day it happens will be one the fuel industry hates, but it'll put a smile on the face of those who've had to say at one time or another, fill her up. I'm Ralph Robinson.
As you can see, many patents have already...
No, yeah, we're not. We don't need to see the rest of that. It doesn't pertain. Yeah, so next time you're at the gas station and you don't have an electric car, just think of what could have been. This dude invents a water-powered car. Of course he gets killed because you're taking money out of the hands of big oil companies. Of course you are. Like... I'm not even going to go. I'm just... Stanley Meyer, everybody. Yay. Have you ever heard of Stanley Meyer before? I doubt it. I doubt it. Okay, great. And let's talk about 9/11 for a little bit because we can't really talk about any 9/11, or excuse me, any New World Order false flags without bringing up 9/11, because this is just oh my gosh. But the best part about, word this carefully, the best part about post 9/11 culture in the United States is the fact that there is a 501c3 nonprofit called Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. Over 3,000 of them that dispute the results of the official investigations into the September 11th attacks. And like I said at the beginning of the video, I didn't know about Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth until years after I started studying 9/11 stuff. I don't even remember like what was the impetus for me finding them. I really don't remember. I think it was in a documentary that I saw. But saying all that to say, they go around the country, and their entire purpose is to reopen the investigations and have them done fairly based on the science that they know very well. Will that ever happen? I seriously doubt it. But let's watch the video. Let's see what they have to say.
I don't want to be involved in conspiracy theories. There are lots of them. They can go on. We can speculate on that forever. What we really need to know is how those buildings came down.
World Trade Center 7 collapsed because of fires fueled by office furnishings. It did not collapse from explosives or from fuel oil fires.
To undermine scientific integrity is to undermine our democracy.
This is what NIST has done, denied and ignored crucial evidence.
The American people absolutely need the truth of 9/11.
More than 1,500 architects and engineers and 12,000 others, including many scientists, have signed the petition calling for a scientific investigation of the destruction of the Twin Towers and World Trade Center Building 7. The report, issued by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, referred to as NIST, was not valid science.
They're talking about a single columnar collapse or failure that resulted in a total collapse of the building.
Building number 7 descended in free fall for the first 100 feet, which means that there was absolutely no resistance to descent whatsoever.
So all of the columns really needed to be severed at the same time.
The symmetry is the smoking gun.
NIST has admitted it went into free fall for 8 stories.
You don't need to be an engineer or an architect to see what happened to those buildings.
Dit is controlled demolition. Zeker weten. Zeker weten.
What I saw, it was a classic implosion. The center of the core, the penthouse area, starts to move first, and then the building follows along with it.
NIST excluded the document from FEMA in Appendix C that documented the evidence of melting steel.
In an office fire, you cannot generate enough heat to melt steel.
There were these iron microspheres present in all of the dust samples. They needed to have been formed in extremely high temperatures.
All the characteristics of the microspheres, along with what I see in the attack of the beams that were actually found, tell me that thermite was involved in melting those steel beams.
In the dust, what we have found is a modern version of thermite, which we call nanothermite.
NIST concedes that they found no evidence for explosives. So then we asked them, well, did you look? And they said, no, we did not look for explosives or residues of explosives.
And in fact, the evidence is overwhelming that these red grade crystals are very high temperature incendiaries.
And we have watched as scientific integrity has been undermined, scientific research politicized in an effort to advance predetermined ideological agendas.
if this is a crime, I think everybody agrees it's a crime, evidence was removed from the scene of the crime. You can't do science when you are deprived of the evidence and when your hypothesis is the least valid instead of the most likely. And the most likely hypothesis in the case of Building 7 wasn't even mentioned. This is not science.
Every time I'm still on 9/11. Every time I think of that, it just blows me, man. Like 3,000 people. You know, you're just gonna 3,000 people. I remember I tried to tell one person about 9/11, and she told me, "I've heard that, but you know, Torres, I just can't believe that people would be that mean." And that's why she doesn't believe that 9/11 wasn't an inside job. That's why she doesn't believe 9/11 was an inside job. At the time, I didn't know what to say. But now, I would be like, really? Well, what about a few hundred years of slavery? Because it was a black woman who was telling me this. So I was like, well, I should have said, well, what about a few hundred years of slavery? Because people sure as heck were mean that long. You don't think they could have, they weren't mean for a couple hours on one day in human history? I don't know how long it was planned for, but I'm just saying, you don't think that people can be that mean? Well, what about slavery? What about the Holocaust? You know? What about SeaWorld capturing Tillicum and making him, you know, do flips and tricks and torturing him his entire life? What about that? I've seen people get that mean, but whatever. You know? So yeah, 9/11, there's that. Yep. And here we go. Why does all this matter? You really think, once again, that Smedley Butler's experience was isolated? That no business or no group of businessmen, wealthy people, has ever tried to take over the United States or anything larger or smaller than that before, during, or after what he went through? You really think that was an isolated incident? You really think that the power elite would allow a water-powered car to exist? Or charismatic and qualified politicians, lawyers, and virologists to expose the origins of AIDS? You really think that they would allow that to exist? Okay. And what we just saw, literally thousands of scientists are saying that the 9/11 narrative can't possibly be what it says based on science and physics and structural engineering principles. You really think, you know, and yet we vote, right? And we get up and we're involved, you know, civically or whatever, and we support our congressmen and we support our leaders and stuff. And I'm not saying everybody's involved in this. I think it's a slim, powerful minority, okay? But there are a lot of people who know of that minority that aren't doing a dang thing, okay? Why does all this matter? I wrote this on my outline so I could stay on track, you see. Many of us place way too much faith in a system that is not meant to benefit us. This system does not care about you. It only exists to glorify Satan through the death, oppression, and misinformation of the people. Take that to the bank and get your fiat currency with it. Cash that joint. Yeah. So before we get finished here, let's see. I wanted to talk a little bit about, or no, actually, you know what? Because I think we got videos coming up. Oh yeah, we got videos coming up. Okay, great. So we can take a break now. But what I just showed you there were historical examples of how the New World Order has manifested itself in the past to achieve its means. Okay? We're going to talk more about the New World Order after the break. What you've just seen, though, are the measures with which the New World Order, led by Satan, what they are willing to take and what they're willing to do in order to achieve their aim. And so this next section that you're looking at on the screen, we're going to focus specifically on Lucifer and how he specifically is the culprit behind this. You're going to have your own interpretations of this information. I'm just asking that you would, once again, keep an open mind. I'm going to put some space here in the video. Pause if you need to. Get up. Take a break, bathroom break, whatever. Now's a good time to take a break. I'll wait and get some water myself.